Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well. My name's William, this is iRacing, and today we're going to be driving the Porsche 718 Cayman GT4 around Barber. I'm going to have a hot lap for you set up and then a little bit of a track guide as well. This is for the official iRacing Michelin Pilot Challenge series that's going on this week. Apologies for the video being up a little bit late. I'm in full spa 24-hour prep mode, so a lot of time getting consumed. Trying not to get off tracks around there. So anyways, guys, if you like this video, please give it a like. It does help me out a ton, and I appreciate all the support for this. So I hope you guys enjoy. I will have the hot lap up next and then be back for the track guide and the setup. So enjoy. Alright everyone, so we'll go ahead and go through a bit of a track guide here for Barber Motorsports Park in the Porsche 718 Cayman GT4. So starting on the front stretch here, I'm going to take it down into turn 1, and what I'm looking for here is this 2 board and this little discoloration in the tarmac as we approach it. So you can see here as we get close to the 2, right as I get onto this discoloration in the tarmac onto the brakes, it's going to be pretty hard onto the brakes. You can see the pressure there around 60-70% initially, and then trailing it off as we turn the car in, and I'm aiming for this curb. Really just this is kind of awkward. If you miss the inside line here, you're going to run off wide, hit this grass, and have a very bad day. So you really want to keep this nice and tight, and I was a little bit too conservative in here, in all honesty. You can see we absolutely smashed that curb, pick the throttle up immediately, and yeah, we don't run really out past this seam, getting the whole car over on this left side. Um, I could have carried a little bit more speed through there, but ultimately pretty happy with that line. And then just straddling this seam that I was talking about, and very early onto the brakes for turn 2. If you're making it past this little bit of tarmac, past this grass strip, before you get on the brakes, you're going to be too late, and you're really going to miss the line through turn 2. And turn 2 is really important to immediately aim for this white line on the inside of the track. You don't want to really open this up and arc it in. You want to hold as tight of a line around this entire corner as you can, and just trailing the brake ever so slightly, and not trying to go any further out than this seam in the track here. And as the car comes off of that seam, aggressively back into the throttle, aiming for this curb here. You're going to have to give a little lift, most likely, to keep the car in tight, and then right back on the throttle and opening it up towards this curb here as your exit point, and straightening the wheel out as you get there. Straight off of this curb now, you can see this little bit of a pretty massive curb up on the top of this hill. That is exactly what you're going to aim for. This is a bit a bit blind. This is extremely blind. You don't want to hit this curb, but you do want to get really close to it. That way you can keep a nice straight wheel, not scrub off too much speed as you accelerate down here. Now, as we get into the next zone here, looking for the 3 board, and then I'm going to brake as I pass the 3 board right before I get to the 2 board, and just kind of like a halfway point in between them. You can use this Marshall stand on the right side if you need a better reference, but hard on the brakes here. And then as we come up to this curb here, I think that's going to be our turn-in point really. So you can see how I'm starting to already kind of trail off the brakes as I hit that curb, turning the car in and aggressively aiming for the inside curb here. Once again, early apex, right on it, not wanting to hit the curb as it'll shoot you off to the right-hand side, but very aggressive on the turn-in, nice and early. The car will set and right back into the throttle. Kind of let the car run out wide, but you're not really gonna let it run out too wide. There's no reason to go all the way out over to the right here. You're just really gonna let it settle and then come back to the left of the track. I let it run out really wide on there, but you don't really need to. You want to get the car back over to the left side as soon as you can. And now then, just accelerating down this straight, we're going to be looking for the 2 board once again. And as we approach it here, this part is extremely tricky. So right at the 2 board, onto the brakes, and turning in right off of this curb right here, or the 1 sign. And we're looking for this first curb here right past the shadows of the trees. That is our first aiming point. So this is a pretty technical section, and you kind of have to do some curb hopping as well. So it's actually a good bit of fun in all honesty. But you're going to want to hit this curb, and if you can kind of see it, there's another curb right over the crest here, and that's where we're going to be going with the car next. So hitting this curb, and then right back on the throttle a little bit, straightening the wheel back to the left, onto the brakes again. And this is important, with a nice straight wheel you can just kind of ride over this curb. As long as you've got the car nice and straight, the car is not even really affected, still hard on the brakes, and then turning in, aiming for about a pretty normal apex here. Right as we hit the apex, right back into the accelerator, pretty much 100% right away, and getting a good exit. This is really important. And that corner, if you just slightly mess up any of this initial part, you can lose 2/10 through this sector, no problem. So once again, just hitting that curb, straightening it out, back onto the brakes, settling the car, riding that curb, and then turning it in right as soon as you hit the apex, aggressively picking the throttle back up and exiting the corner here. Now then, into probably this is legitimately one of the trickiest corners to get right in this car around here. So as we go down this straightaway here, you've got a really fast left-right coming up, and you can see this curb up here in the kind of the darker line. This is pretty much exactly the line that I'm going to be aiming for. So once we get to this curb, we're still full throttle, turning it in and aiming for this curb. We are going to destroy this curb and catch it on the bounce and fling it over to the next curb. So you can see here, still full throttle, nailing this curb, and now coming off the throttle a little bit as I hit it. So off the throttle to about 30% and turning it in to this curb. Now this curb, it's pretty easy to get a 1x if you hit it wrong, but you want to hit it about in the midpoint. And then the important thing is how far to the right you are of the curb. So you can see here, I am basically almost the entire car is on the curb, but my trajectory is going to take me to where this right hand side of the car is just barely, like, just gonna nick the grass on the exit of the corner. It kind of looks like we're gonna swing and like just absolutely cut through all that grass, but because of the way we hit the curb, it's gonna throw the car to the left a little bit, and we are going to just barely get the right rear corner over the grass, and then picking the throttle back up, making sure you don't run out too wide, And you can use this curb. You can get a little bit of the grass, but this is pretty deadly if you get it wrong, and it takes quite a bit of confidence to carry the speed through that section properly. So now then, as we come up to the next section, this is just blind completely. It's kind of fun around this course with how blind everything is. But we're going to come up to this section, and right in between the 2 and the 1, I'm going to brake and aim immediately for this first curb once I have it sighted. I don't want to hit this curb, but I do want to hit this next one. So already back into the throttle, braking again to set the car, and then downshift in there as well to get a little bit more rotation. Up onto this curb, the second I hit the curb, I'm picking the throttle back up, letting the car settle over these bounces, and then really picking the throttle back up all the way out now, not trying to scrub speed, not trying to run out too wide though. And in this section, immediately darting in towards this next curb here. And this is pretty tricky through this section now. Once I hit that curb, I'm trailing the brake and picking the throttle back up again. You can see this seam. I don't want to go any further left in this corner than this seam really. I can kind of straddle it, but I don't want to go all the way out over to the left here. Even though this is a continuous right-hand corner, it does tighten up, and you're going to want to be on the inside of the track really to make the most of it. So back onto the throttle, and then kind of just playing with them both here. A little bit of overlap that's kind of ugly to see, but you can see just straddling this seam and trailing the brakes. So as I'm trailing the brakes, I'm just getting that nose to pull in towards this curb it's blind for a very long time. Once I hit that curb, back onto the throttle, trying to now keep the car over to the right and really set up this last corner, the left-hander, hitting this curb, and I actually kind of screwed up here. So I turned in just a little bit too early for this section. You can see as I turned in is like right when I hit the curb. I wanted to turn in about right here is whenever I really wanted to turn the car in, about halfway through this curb instead of right whenever I got to it. But just a little bit of my timing just being a little bit off, and it probably cost me just about a tenth, probably a little less. But you can see I'm already turning the car and arcing the car over to the left and aiming for this curb once again. You kind of use the curbs as the aiming point, but I will say on this exit curb here, you can hit it, but I definitely prefer to just kind of graze the end of the curb here. I don't want the car unbalanced and shooting off to the right, or me having to get off the throttle all the way down the main straight or something. You're not going to be able to recover the time from that. So just kind of barely clipping it and then picking the throttle up fully once I know I'm going to be able to keep it within the bounds of the track. But since I turned in a little bit too early, I got some understeer and I couldn't quite pick the throttle up. I pretty much should have been full throttle by about here. But yeah, you can still see about 65% throttle there. So, but that is basically it. You're full throttle all the way to the line now, and that is a lap around Barber in the Porsche 718 Cayman GT4. All right, everybody. So that was a hot lap around Barber in the Porsche 718 Cayman GT4. Managed a 128.459. Take a look at the splits here. A little bit faster, a little slow in the first chicane, or not the first chicane, the first sector there, but ultimately pretty darn happy with that time. We'll go ahead and take a look at the setup real quick. Minimum tire pressures still the way to go on this car, in my opinion. Nothing really to talk about there too much. We'll go ahead and get into the actual setup part of it. So I started with my Silverstone setup, and it is largely the same. Just took fuel out, so 44 liters for the race, or 11.6 gallons should be a safe amount of fuel. Um, Other than that, I left my anti-roll bars the same. Played around with a little bit stiffer to try and get the feel, but it actually all wound up being in the camber and the bump rebound on this car. It's pretty much the big adjustment you can make. I also increased my electronic assist, my ABS and traction control, electronic stability control by one click around this track with all the um, elevation changes and everything. The car can really get away from you pretty easy, so just increasing that to help me out a little bit. The one thing I will say about the setup, if you give it a try, It is pretty understeery on the first lap. I think the car in general is like that now since the latest update, but if it winds up getting a little bit too loose for you, um, as the run goes on, or you just don't like the balance of the car, it's a little too free. Uh, just about 2 clicks of toe, maybe even one more, closer to 1 millimeter on the rear, tightens the car up quite a bit. Or alternatively, you can increase the bump on the front, just a few clicks if it is a little loose on turn in, and if it is a little bit loose on corner exit, you can increase the bump on the rear to do that. I'd kind of leave the rebound alone, um, mostly just because it's kind of controlling the way the car handles the curves. It's not the greatest, but it kind of lets you smash them, which you need to do around here. Um, so yeah, there's that. Anyways, guys, that's the setup. Pretty basic. Um, as always with this, if you give it a try, let me know how you get on with it in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.